How old was that company? 2, 3 years. How many employees? 2. How much in the traditional financial statement? 0, more or less. It was all intangibles, sold for $1.6 billion US. And this is an illustration of something is happening, and the old navigation instruments and the map doesn't fit anymore. And it didn't fit even 20 years ago. So it's becoming more and more acute to address this issue of intangibles, the unexplained value, or the blind spots of the economy. The blind spots of the economy. And that takes us to the knowledge worker. The knowledge worker, we, you, me, and some other people outside this room are not producers. They are value adders. So what's the value adding that you're doing today? You're spending this day here in this room, in the economics, in the accounting system. How does it show up? Well, it shows up as expenses. So what will happen to the asset value of your enterprise by sitting here? It's decreasing. So should you be in the room or should you be somewhere else? And this is so important that the mapping system doesn't fit what is taking place. So therefore, look for value adding. And ask the question, how much value do you add during the day and the period? So what we start to see is that we are moving from production to some kind of value adding. We are moving from product business to people business. People business. And here we come closer and closer to the aspects of IC of Thailand. That the IC of Thailand is not in the products, it's in the people. And it's in the context of the people of Thailand, the culture. So it's somewhere outside the statistical system. And that is called people business, not product business. But just look at the traditional curriculums in universities. We are still talking about product manager. We are talking about the distribution of products. We have even shopping plazas for products and go shopping. So therefore, the issue is how do we approach the future more intelligently? By looking at this little potential. So, Eric, if I ask you, how much of your potential have you used so far? 2%? 98% is capital in waiting. So how much of the potential are you actually leveraging off, rather than just looking at the traditional aspect? And that takes us into another dimension that I see so important for the future, and that's the brain. So to ask a little very simple question, Gordon, how much does your brain weight, roughly? No idea? Do you have any idea of the size of your shoes? So how come you know more about your shoes than your brain? So which ones are the most important, your shoes or your brain? So this is very simple questions. So how many of you have seen neuroscientists among board of directors? You have economists, you have lawyers, but do you have neuroscientists people among the board of directors that can help you to start to ask the question, how do we nourish our brain power? And today the brain information is actually flooding in. I was sitting on the Swedish Brain Research Foundation for some years. Extremely interesting. I learned a lot. But still, we are seeing these as very odd people working with something that is not applicable in business. I can assure you, by inviting some of these neuroscientists into how you learn, how you share learning exactly, and things like that, can give you a totally new, unexplored territory for the future of your business. One little area between your ears is extremely interesting. It's called the hippocampus. So I can ask you the question, how's your hippocampus working now, Eric? No idea, but you're smiling. It's a very early sign that your hippocampus is working pretty good, actually. And what is the function of the hippocampus? It's to produce endorphins, joy of life. Could it be that people in Thailand are extremely good in producing joy of life? Could it be one of your hidden assets? The production of endorphins and serotonin, which is visible in the way you treat your other people and treat me as a visitor and guest here in this country. This is an illustration that we need to stretch from traditional numbers and economics to the right side of the brain. So we're going from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain, which is much more picture-driven. Images. And this is one of the ways our brains are functioning. It's not functioning with numbers. Numbers are only spices. So if you look at the traditional balance sheet and profit and loss statement, how much information and intelligence do you get out of that? Actually, very little. So therefore, if you start to think about another navigation tool which is based on pedagogics of pictures, we are going to leverage much more for the future. I call this knowledge navigation rather than knowledge management. Knowledge management is like a good librarian system. We know what we know. Knowledge navigation is what we don't know. Those quizzics. So how much unexplored, not knowing blind spots do we have out there? And that is knowledge navigation. Knowledge navigation for the opportunity space. And the opportunity space is in economics called opportunity cost. So the little bottom line for the knowledge economics is opportunity cost. The cost of not addressing the potential. The cost of losing the opportunity. And how quickly do you lose that opportunity? Is another reinvestment paradigm. So how quickly are you addressing that? We were starting to look into this little city in Mediterranean as a kind of cognitive landscape, a learning landscape. So how's the learning landscape of Thailand? And the reason why we started to look into this was that this founder of the Research Policy Institute in Lund, he was born in this city. This city is called Ragusa. And what makes this city so interesting is that it was one of the most affluent city-states for 600 years in the Mediterranean, which is a very long period. To be sustaining the wealth of the people of a city-state for 600 years is a tremendous political and leadership challenge. So how do you sustain it? Well, they developed this kind of concept of social intelligence. And they had a special task force, which you can apply in any type of enterprise. It was called dragomans. Dragomans. And this task force was to look around the corner for what don't we know, that we don't know, and report it back. In the company where I was working, we called it future teams. And a dragoman and a future team or a knowledge navigator is the same type of approach. So therefore, to have this kind of perhaps a little bit unpleasant questioners working with the quizzics of the not knowing is extremely important. And today you can see it in knowledge technology systems like Bloomberg. In the old days it was Reuters, and these are the early signs of it. And you can leverage these kind of task force tremendously, as we will hear later during the day. But the bottom line for it is social intelligence. So what's out there, outside the enterprise, outside this room, outside Thailand, that will influence your future? So this little